I try to kick off these sort of talks. So I thought firstly I'd just look around the lecture theatre, and since we're having a discussion about sort of entry-efficient buildings, so I just note the halogen downlighters, the two plugged in like duplex heaters in the corner, and say it's a modern building. So there is scope for improvement. Anyway, what I'm going to do is to actually, I suppose, fill the role. The last two speakers, I guess, are people today have been talking about what they're doing to make things happen, to actually make a difference in the world. And I guess the last two speakers are going to talk about some of the help that's available. There's no enough help, but we do what we can. So I'm from the Carbon Trust, and to put the context of the Carbon Trust up on the table up front, is that we're an independent company set up by government in 2001, which actually means that actually we're a company limited by guarantee. We have a board of directors, so we act as though we're a private company. We invest public funds, we try and do the private sector money. And that influences the way we work. And the way we work is set up by our mission. And our mission is to accelerate the move to a low-carbon economy by developing commercial low-carbon technologies and helping organisations to reduce their carbon emissions. Now, within that mission, which is quite a mouthful, I'm going to focus on the idea of developing commercial low-carbon technologies. As I said, I come from the innovations business area. Our mantra is commercialising low-carbon technologies. Push comes to shove, research does not save carbon, its implementation does. So what we're about is trying to get those ideas out of the laboratory into practice. When people buy and use and deploy low-carbon technologies, they save carbon, very rarely beforehand. So, what do we do to actually try and turn some of this into reality? Well, we try and actually match things together, to bring together public and private funding, encourage partnership, leverage. If you think about it, all the people in the audience, and several previous speakers say the same, is public funding is great, but actually private funding is the backbone of business. At a certain point in scaling your business up, you will need private funding. You've got to prepare to go that way. If you can get public funding on soft terms, great to take it, but you have to focus on raising a lot of money, which means private money. So you have to have this two-headed view of the world. So what we do is we try and use the resource available to us, financial, yes, some money, also our influence and our networks and the others, to bring together partnerships. The partnership required to make a difference. So we do research, we try and bring knowledge to the market. So we do a lot of work, for instance, trying to influence the city, talk to pension funds. What's the value risk to your pensions about climate change? Should that in fact change the way they invest money? How can we actually get people to actually take clean tech seriously as a venture capital type sector and see beyond the sort of bubbly sort of rap that's gone around about into the core business of sound companies? We've heard from them. So what we're trying to do is to create and help people to grow their businesses. We do it through grant funding, through advice, through help. We can also do it by equity finance. We help on that. As I said, we're a company limited guarantee, so the title of this talk is Making Business Sense of Climate Change, using the strapline of the Carbon Trust. So, as a company limited guarantee, we are not for profit, we're not for dividend, which means we look to make profit so we can reinvest it. The more money we can make, the more we can reinvest, the more the wider market sees this is a good area to act in. So we're trying to be exemplars. One of the reasons why we have a venture capital fund. So, I said we're looking at this commercialisation journey. It's all about this idea of the journey to commercialisation, idea to reality. Now, there are lots and lots of people talk about innovation change, innovation systems. It's quite a favourite thing of mine. But you'll often see little graphs like this, little icons, which talk about the idea of going from basic research to applied research to early demonstration to full demonstration to market product. It's very handy for what you say, but actually when you think about it, where do you put coal on that scene? Yes, it's a warranted product, but they still do basic science in it. So what use is that when we start thinking about helping people along? And that's why underneath it, I'm trying to say one of the things we're trying to do is actually, what are each of these stages crudely, broadly trying to achieve? How do you tell you've done what it says there? So we say, actually, if we look at innovation, basic research is all about proving the principle. In principle, this works. In principle, this obeys the laws of thermodynamics. Then you say the concept, the practical realization of that principle works. You then have to say, actually it works outside the laboratory as well as inside it, proof of viability. You then have to say, it worked once, can it work many times? Scalability. Then proof of value, there's a good reason for buying it. This is where things start getting very difficult, because quite often the technologies you're developing are emerging into mature markets, very efficient, very cheap competition. You've got to beat them, which is about proving your value. And then finally, you actually prove its quality, it's worth doing, and actually this is where you get into the idea of being able to offer a warranty. The 25-year lifetime warranty on PV is great, but actually the average lifetime of a roof is 40 years. Okay, that's not a market brand. You can see how it could become one. So that's great. Nice piece of theory. Comes to university education, always give a bit of theory. But it's not all. Actually, there are a number of journeys going on. In fact, we talk about 4 journeys. Yes, the technology makes a journey, but the company makes a journey. It makes a journey from a guy typically in a shed, to trivialise somewhat, who's actually working for sweat equity, through to a company with 30 plus employees who's actually getting funding for profit. So along there you've got to build a team. Along there you've got to raise money. That's a very difficult journey. Actually the market journey, and indeed some people say there are actually 2 journeys here. The market in terms of the purchaser, but also the market in terms of supply chain. We'll just talk about it. This is the mythical change from technology push to market pull. What happens along that transition? Because it's not a binary on or off. You start off with your great idea which no one knows about, which means it has no interaction with the market. You want to move it to something where actually you've got a full dynamic feedback system with your market. You're developing second and third generation products in the light of what you know people want. So you have this journey from the idea of nothing happening to actually I know where I want to go, to actually getting some recognition because where you want to go means no difference to you with being there, through to actually proving there's a reason for buying it. Lovely question to ask someone is, who buy it? Why? How much do they pay for it? Very difficult question, but key ones to be answered. And then you go through the idea of actually becoming rational with processes. You buy it for a good reason. You really then are seeing market pull. Customers tell you what they want. The idea of, for instance, developing the 10 kilowatt red unit and then finding out the market wants to buy 5 kilowatt blue is a very expensive mistake in money terms, but equally expensive in reputation terms. You need to know what's going on in your market. So that's market journey. And then you've got this revenue journey. Sometimes perhaps the esoteric, but actually sometimes a really, really key one. Let's think about the guy in the shed with a radical invention. He goes out and says, I want to start seeing what the market does. And he will find either the regulatory framework is neutral or negative. It's hostile. Accidentally, typically. The idea of actually going through and getting BBA accreditation for building products. The idea of health and safety standards around hydrogen storage and fuel cells and hydrogen stores, for example. It's not there deliberately, it's there for good reason. So you do have this problem quite often. The market's against you, the regulatory framework's against you. So the idea, how do you actually then get rid of the negatives, move if necessary to incentivise your technology, but then actually exit? Because in the end, to be a viable product for our market, it has to be either broadly saying we like this, or hands off, or it's completely neutral. Okay, so you have all those journeys going on. So, again, more theory. What does that mean for what the Carbon Trust does and how we set up and do our business? Try to explain why we do what we do. Well, the answer is, in the business, in the innovations area, what we're trying to do, it's been cut on my laptop, is trying to actually say, we're trying to recognise that all 4 journeys exist. Different things we can do have massive impact in different areas. We need to think about the big picture. So yes, R&D, research and development, is classically the way to address the technical challenges. But there's a very strong feedback to the company in there. Is how often, as a company, a small company typically, when you've looked at your business plan, scrubbed it, how often do you actually have to refocus your technology development plans? Similarly, you've just done a piece of focused technology development work. How often do you re-scrub the business plans in light of what tells you about what you can do and what you can't do? And indeed, there's a link through to the market which does this show terribly well. But then you've got the company journey. How do we help with that? We help with that through incubation services we call it. The idea is that you as a small startup company typically are doing things like trying to sort out your patent position, How do you actually work out what your patent family needs to look like? How do you plan to grow your team, to bring in outsiders typically, to move from the idea of you as technical inventor to perhaps you as CTO? What does the CEO look like? What financial help do you need? How do you actually look at your market moving on to the third chain? What are your target markets? What are the niches? What are the dimensions? What do people buy in that sort of area? Those are the sort of things we can help you with. And then focusing, supposedly, most of the market journey, but with strong feedback throughout, that we call technology acceleration. These are very early stage demonstration programs, proof of benefits sort of things. So this is where we go in and actually we typically just apply data to actually find out against an absolute standard whether technology works. The idea being that actually you do see, if you've got this right, you find out things at scale, which allows you feedback to actually find out where your company sits within things, and you're capable of getting a chance to market anything else. And that's where the technology is up to. So this is where the innovations activities of the Carbon Trust sits. So I say we think holistically. Yes, it's in there, but there are big gaps in here. And this is where the rest of the Carbon Trust comes from, the other business areas. And they are investments, enterprise solutions, insights. Insights is very much about the regulatory journey, both within Whitehall, but also we do a lot of time, as I say, looking at things like pension funds, capital management activities, why people should actually take carbon seriously, why they should price it into companies. Not because they're bubble, because of sound economics and financial markets. The idea of investments is we do the straight VC, commercial terms. We follow things. We talk the talk in the innovations area, investments walks the walk. Similarly, we have enterprises, which is this really one of these areas of valleys of death, which is you actually got what you think is a good product, good technology, but the market's not ready. So the idea here is, can we form businesses around identified market need, market pain, when no one's currently acting? The idea, you form a company, you form a business, typically using existing technology, prove the viability, and then the idea is you exit, making a turn, reinvesting it. But we are doing things like working with partnership renewables there, which is looking at actually developing renewables on public sector land, which is a real no-no for private developers because the overheads can be very high. We know public authorities well. And then we have solutions, which is historically the backbone of the Carbon Trust. This is where we go and tell people like you all about the energy efficiency they're building, and actually go and work with, do surveys to advise and so on. So this is how the Carbon Trust offering stacks up. And I hope it actually explains some of why we do what we do to those who actually look and say, complex organisations, I've been to them, the website's full of information I don't understand, and they're really difficult to approach. Apologies for that, but this is trying to explain, hopefully next time you go back, it's easy to get through to find out how we can help you. Now that's very generic Carbon Trust speak. So in terms of actually what we're doing in the buildings area, now when I put this together, I very much concentrated on energy efficiency and so on. And hence, the stats in the come up with don't cover the support we do for some microgeneration, which is substantial. But the idea was, we do a lot in this area. In terms of actually the basic research, the understanding of building envelope and so on, is we do a lot of support with the Research Council through something called Carbon Vision. So this morning was the comment about the 1930s terraced house and so on. Actually, we've got a group called CARBASE, because all academic groups have got acronyms, which is actually looking at bundles of technologies applicable to different types of houses, and a cost curve for applying those to a range of houses, including pre-1919 terraced houses. We also do a lot of applied research projects, small grant projects, up to £250,000. I identified 26 of these as relevant to buildings under the headings of lighting, heating, ventilation, cooling, fabric, integrated design, and controls and energy management. If you go on to talk about what we've done with microchains, this gets ever longer. We've actually incubated 4 companies. So we've helped 4 companies in building areas. A lighting company, a building materials company which is actually looking at integrating building materials with the ventilation system, like the concrete becomes a ventilation system. A PV company which is actually looking at building integrated PV. And indeed a solar water company which is actually looking at changing the water tank. Strange enough. So that's there. In terms of technology, we're doing things. We published this year an advanced metering trial. half-hourly metering for the SME and smart site community, which identified that actually just, if you look at your metering data on a half-hourly basis, you should be able to save about 11% of your energy. If you actually back that up and give people some advice, you can save about 6%. If you give no advice at all, actually only 3% of that 11 is actually implemented. So what a challenge perhaps with ARM is to actually how do you convert the information in meter provides you into action. What do you do when your meter says that your consumption is coming down? It's easy when you've got supply and demand, so you know your solar panels generating, you know your scope. But if you actually turn the kettle on, your consumption goes on. What do you do? You either boil the kettle, you don't. So there's a big thing about information asymmetry in there, perhaps. Small CHP, we're doing a very large trial, ideally about 100 domestic and small commercial CHP units over a year to generate a lot of information on 5 minute data. Big report published on that last week, indicating some of the items that actually in some areas you can save substantial amounts of carbon. If you get it wrong, you can actually generate more carbon than you save by going. And also we're looking to actually prove that we can refurbish buildings to commercial space to a high standard, which is desirable, lettable, and actually lower carbon would like to be the case. Now, the final thing is we do target support where we can make a difference. So everything's on its merits and the rest of it. And we do try and make this thing about progressing towards commercial deployment. I said, so as to make business sense of climate change. Bold statement. Except, well, I'll give you some statistics. If we look at our applied research portfolio, we've got sort of 90 projects now finished in the last 4 years. Of those 90 projects, 25% have gone on to either generate patents or say they're about to generate patents. 32% have actually had follow-on funding. They've gone out instantly, virtually, to get the next project underway. 19% have seen investment into the company. And 13% have actually seen sales or the prospect of sales in the next 3 years. That's making business into climate change. Similarly, with our incubator companies. Now, we have 52 companies who have entered the scheme, roughly 20 of those, so 30 graduates. But actually, the 52 companies, 21 of those have raised external funds. 3 of them on AIM, 2 of them sitting in this room. Sorry, 1 of them sitting in this room. 3 have actually signed license agreements with our help of negotiation, and actually 18 of them have gone on to raise external venture capital type thing, raising in total £55 million of private money. That is making business sense of climate change. And that is actually where we're trying to get people to be in a position where they have a view of where they want to be and the wherewithal to do it technically, commercially, and practically. So thank you for that.